Hi everyone and welcome. I'm re-recording this webinar because actually the mic was off for the first half of it because you have to add the mic to every scene that you do. So without further ado, this webinar is about working with photographic images to create graphic prints or designs or imagery that you want to upload onto a large home decor item. So how I work is I find inspiration from my own photography, and I decide that I want to work with this photo and I want to sort of create something interesting and decorative and stylish that will work printed on a shower curtain. That's usually my main product. It's my staple product in my Etsy shop. So I always keep shower curtains in mind when I design. So my camera is a 10-year-old DSLR, which is a digital SLR camera. It's full frame sensor, which means it produces it gathers a lot of information and fills the whole sensor and you get images that for this camera are max about 6,000 by 4,000 and 300 DPI. I always set the camera on RAW because RAW is going to allow you to further work with that image untouched by your camera processing. You want that when you want to have full control, the full ability that's given to you to edit your images, because it's going to have the full range of information. No compression, no in-camera processing. So if you're going to use your cell phones, and a lot of them are really good out there. So you've got, I used to have a Google Pixel. It took amazing shots. It let me photograph in RAW. Whether it was the same as a DSLR, I'm not sure the difference between RAW in a cell phone camera to a DSLR. My camera is a semi-pro, but it is very old. I'm sure the newer cameras might even produce larger images by now. I'm not sure. I haven't looked into it yet. But if you have an Android phone, either the Fruit or the other one, I don't want to say the names. I'm not sure that you can choose RAW. Maybe you can, but you can certainly look and see what is the maximum size that your camera will allow an output as an image for you. JPEG would be fine to work with still. You just will have an image that's already pre-processed slightly, but you can still edit that and do whatever you want with it. So also, if you're an artist and you work really large on canvas, and say, pour paintings, and you want to throw some paint on a canvas, or you want to do an abstract painting, or you want to do an illustration, you may find that it may be too large to scan. Not all of us have scanners, but most of us have cameras. So if you photograph your art, you're still going to end up with a small photograph, even though your art might be 40 by 50 inches. So you're going to work within the restrictions of what your camera is going to give you in the sense of the size of an image. So anyway, I will show you working with one of my chosen images for this webinar. And it's going to be just simple edits to it. I'm not going to go to the extent that I might if I was actually designing with an intent for a piece of finished artwork that met my idea or my inspiration that I had. So I will move on from here. Thank you for joining. Okay, so if I want to design a shower curtain or a large duvet cover that Printify offers through various print providers, then I need to figure out how am I gonna work with my 4,000 by 6,000 pixel 300 PPI photo and get it to where I have a piece of artwork I can upload and will be large enough for a shower curtain or a duvet or even a blanket. So since I have chosen, well, I'm going to show you this example image, but it's not the one that I'm going to work with in the end here. You can see here that Printify says that a shower curtain must be minimum of 7104 by 7392 pixels width and length. No less dots per square inch DPI than 96. So a 71 by 73 is only going to print at about 12 by 13 inches if you want to keep the DPI at 96. If you have to stretch that out, you're going to end up with DPI so low because it doesn't add dots, it just spreads them out. So you would end up with, like, say 12 DPI to each square inch. You can't do that. It can't be printed like that. So in essence, I cannot work with that image that's only 4,000 by 6,000 and hope to print that on a shower curtain. I'm going to show you an example here of an old piece of artwork I did years ago that's only 4,000 by 4,000 pixels, 300 PPI. This was before shower curtains. So as you can see, that's not going to print large on a 72 inch by 74 inch shower curtain, because if I had to stretch that to fill the design field that's needed to print a shower curtain, my DPI is only going to be 54 dots per square inch. Printify and MWW do not allow that. That's way too low resolution. You'll get a pixelated, blurry print, and your customer will be mad. You'll be mad. Okay, so I will show you the beginning and the end of how I get one of my images to be the right size and print well. Okay, so we're starting with a shower curtain, and you can see the minimum requirements again are 7104 by 7392 at 96 DPI. You cannot upload anything less than that at all. So if you look, and I use Photoshop CC, if you look at the size, I've opened it up to look at the image size, you can see that, yes indeed, I've started with a 7200 by 7714 pixel image. So the reason being why it's a little bigger is I tend to go a little bigger, and I've actually left the length. So the scale, the dimensions are actually a little bigger than what a shower curtain and a little longer. And you can see that it's 300 resolution. So that's 300 pixels per inch. So in a digital image, it's light pixels. In a printed image, it would be dots laid down per square inch. So think about what you can see on a screen. It's going to look different possibly than what the colors will look in print, because the dots get physically laid down and they sort of have to interact with each other. So you've got dots beside dots. So to mix for an orange, it's got to lay yellow and magenta dots, the CMYK printer. So you're never going to get perfect color from what you see on a screen, and that's a whole nother conversation, but you need to sort of do some testing, get some printed samples with either a color scale or print a bunch of your designs together at one time. Look at the differences. Look at how the turquoises print, how the greens print, how the bright pinks print, because it's not always going to be to what you see on a screen. Okay, so I can see that my 7200 by 7714 at 300 pixels, the ideal size to print that at would be 24 inches by 25, and it would keep the resolution of 300 dots per square inch. But shower curtains are not 24 by 25, they're 71 by 72 inches. So, or 74 actually, 71 by 74. So you can print the image 2 to 3 times larger than its size. I think 2 times its size is recommended. So when you're creating your images, you actually want to make your image large enough to start pixel dimension so that you're not increasing it more than maybe 2 to 2.5 times. Because as you increase it, the amount of pixels in each square inch are going to reduce. It's not going to add the 300 times 3. It's going to deduct and spread those pixels out. So ideally, if you look on the left here, bottom, I really ideally should make my images around 9,000, 8 or 9,000 pixels at 300 ppi to really be sure, because I'm skirting the border line of the minimum here. So as you can see here, Printify, when I fill the design space with this image that we're going to create shortly, is just fitting into their minimum. It's like 1 DPI higher, 97 DPI. So yes, that will probably print fine, especially that 96 DPI image print is fine for viewing at the distance that a shower curtain gets viewed at. You're not looking right up close at it. It's not a photo. It's not like, you know, something you're going to be looking very closely at. And now we'll move on to the actual showing of how I edit a chosen photograph to make it a piece of printable artwork. Hi everybody, I'm back. So this is how I create a large enough image for print on large home decor items. Like I haven't said that enough. Okay, so as you can see here, I've got a image I chose from my photos recently that I took in July from a marsh, a local marsh. I kind of like the layout of this. I like the composition. It's got flowers, you know, people like nature. So I chose this for this example, and I'm not going to do as much to this as I sometimes will do to my images. I mean, I get into laying over other photos on top of photos, like I'll put trees over top of, you know, a landscape, or, you know, silhouettes of birds or whatever. Like there could be like 10 photos put together, and then I try different blending layers and all that stuff. But I can't, that takes way too long to show anyone. So this is going to be a pared down version that ends up with a nice graphic design at the end. Good, you know, and it works for the example. So as you can see, this is a landscape photo. So it's, in its sense, it's a landscape plus it's landscape scale. So it's long, it's wider than it is tall. That doesn't work for a shower curtain either. So we're going to end up having to crop this, which is going to make the image even smaller. So now we've got here where I've opened it up, and I've got a border here showing where I cropped it to. So I usually will make a layer that has a stroke so I can sort of see, okay, so much in this space is going to be what's going to print on the shower curtain. So I choose my crop sort of visually from that. And so we'll move on. Okay, so now I'm showing you here the cropped image. And now you're going to see here, because I've opened up the image size, you're going to see that the width is now only, I can't even read it, 3855. So that's even smaller than what I had before. And still, now we seem to be regressing, but you'll see I end up having to make this bigger. So we'll take that away now. And we've got here where I'm going to start moving into making this image larger. So what I do first, I don't do this with all images, but I'm choosing to do it with this one because, you know, I can get a little bit added to it pretty easily. I'm sure that content aware in Photoshop will probably do a little bit of adding in, and it'll be workable. I can work with it. So what I do is I increase my canvas size by a bit. I usually round it off. I make rounded off even numbers. And I then will choose that transparent space around that image, and I will ask Photoshop to do some content aware on it, see what it does. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it needs too much fixing, sometimes it's bad, and then you got to find another idea. So here you can see that I've selected the transparent area, and I always put a transparent layer under things, so I don't want to select on that layer because there's no pixels. It doesn't know where to select. It'll just select the whole thing. So you want to be on the layer that has the image, and you just click with your magic wand tool, and it will select that whole transparent border there. And that's where we're going to ask Photoshop to do some magic. So it's not AI generative fill, though I have played with that a little, and I almost get the same results as content aware, but I don't know much about AI. I mean, technically you could take your photo and just find an AI upscaling program. I think some are free, some you have to pay for, but you could, if you want to do that, you could probably not have to do a lot of this manual stuff. But I've always done it this way, and I don't really want to learn AI upscaling stuff. Anyway, because I am an artistic person, so I like to do things manually. So we'll move on next, and we'll see what content aware does. So I will have that selection of the border still there. I didn't show it here, but I do Control H on the keyboard so that I can take away that border, because I want to see the whole image. I don't want to see it broken up with the little border that got added with the, you know, the dotted lines around it. So I can see that content aware did a pretty good job. I mean, usually it'll do some repeating because it takes what's near it, and you can change your settings and play with that, but I'm not going to show that in here. You'd have to sort of trial and error that on your own. And everybody's ability with Photoshop could be 0 to like way better than mine, so I'm not going to get into stuff like that. But you can see here the little added edge around it, if you can remember how much space was blank there. And let's see. So the best thing to do is do this sort of adding to your image before you enlarge it. It just works better in the end when you have to start adding graphics to it. So here you can see I'm starting to get nitpicky about, okay, I'm looking at it a little closer, and I'm seeing that there's a lot of repeating of visual patterns in it, and I don't really want that. If they're really close to the border, I don't really care, because a shower curtain, an image you upload for a shower curtain is never going to get printed right to the edge of your image. There's always going to be a bleed off the printed area. So I know that probably 2 or 3 inches are going to get sacrificed, so I don't worry too much about the very edges. And I tend to know when to start worrying because I've seen enough of my designs printed. So what I'll do is usually just choose little areas in the image that I don't like, and I'll circle them with the selection tool, and I'll say content aware and see if it changes it to my liking. And I might cut areas out with the circle, and then I soften the edges with a blur a bit, and I'll lay them over other things and then sort of change the opacity back and forth to see if it sort of blends in and minimizes some things I don't like. But that's all playing. That's all personal playing with an image. Here you can see that I've now got my image where I'm ready to actually upscale it, like make it, tell Photoshop, please make this image bigger. I'm going to keep the resolution at 300, but I'm actually going to ask it to make 7200 for the width, and it'll subsequently keep it to scale, so it's going to adjust the height automatically to what I pick for the width. Okay, so here you can see where on the left is the image, how it looks after I chose to increase the size. So I'm going to start playing with some filters in Photoshop, blending layers. And I like to use high pass for sharpening as opposed to unsharp mask or just sharpen. It just, you can adjust it. So you duplicate your layer and you do the high pass filter on the top layer. So then once you apply the high pass, you can adjust the opacity or even the blending. I usually have to go to overlay or soft light or vivid light. You have to go to those blending layers and you can see the difference of how sharp, and it might make it too severe, so then you can just sort of take the opacity down. But that's, again, things you play with yourself in Photoshop when you're photo editing. So now we're going to talk about doing some filtering and graphics and textures and stuff with digital digital filters and layers. And one program I'd like to recommend, and I've had mine for 8 or 9 years, is the NIK Collection. So the NIK Collection was free for quite a long time. I think it was offered by Google. So you can still get the free version. I do have it linked here on this image. And then there's a paid version, which I don't have the paid version because I still have the free version from 8 years ago, which I've found to be sufficient for now. There is another program called Pixlr, which is Pixlr. I did have an app that I paid for a flat fee, but Pixlr suddenly revamped everything about 4 years ago. They took away the simple app with all the cute borders and overlays and stuff you could add to your images. And they now have a full like image editing software site program, and I'm not sure if it's an app anymore or if it's on a cloud. But it does look like a good program. It's just very extensive, and I don't think it's cheap. So you might want to look into that. But anyway, so I'm going to use my NIK Collection, and I use this thing a lot. There's 4 different sections. I think there's a fake HDR section. There's a black and white, so that's got a lot of really cool filters. There's Color Effects Pro, which is the one you see here on the screen. I use that a lot. I'll sometimes use that and then I'll okay it and accept the image with a bunch of layers on it. You can add filter on filter on filter. You can turn them off on the right there. You can see the differences, and maybe you decide 3 down that you don't like the first filter anymore, it doesn't work anymore, stuff like that. So there's, as you can see on the left, there's so many options, and then within those options, there's options. So it's just a matter of getting to know the program and having fun and getting to, know your favorite filters or what they kind of do and stuff. So once I decide I'm finished in there, I do okay, and I'll look at my image back again in Photoshop. So I brought the image into Photoshop again. I okayed it, and I've got here on the left top, you can see the image I ended up with after finally applying a bunch of filters and being happy. You may have liked the other image on the previous page better. I kind of like it now too, but anyway, for the sake of this, I chose something I thought would work the best for this example. They're very saturated colors, so I decided now I would like to try some of the Photoshop filters. They can be a little archaic, they're a little old school, some of them, but there's a few that I really like, and they're under the artistic filters. There's like a pastel stroke one, there's a palette knife, there's watercolor, there's poster edges, there's all kinds. So you can just play around with them, and again, you can add on top of each other and change. I think you can change the opacity. I'm not sure, but anyway, I tend to always lean towards palette knife and pastel strokes, and you can adjust how strong or weak it is. And I think Photoshop artistic filters will change your image, so you would probably want to duplicate your layer first, because so that you have your original layer before you applied this artistic filter. Because then you can turn it off, you can turn it on, you can change the opacity and have it active with the original if you want. But at least you're not changing your original. Okay, so here you can see that I applied palette knife. You can see that it looks now like sort of like an oil painting, almost like somebody who took a brush and made large brush strokes and shapes, abstracted shapes to build a form of some water lilies on the water. So it's a little loose, it's sort of hard to tell what it is, I guess. And then I also added rough pastel strokes over top of that. So I kind of like that because it defines the edges a bit and starts adding some linear texture. So now it's becoming more of a graphic image. It's becoming more of a decorative image. It's not so photographic anymore. Okay, so I decided after I finished with the artistic filters in Photoshop, I decided, you know what, I think I'm gonna go into the NIK Collection again. I'm gonna choose the analog. Analog is like sort of mimicking old film, old scratched up film, old like improperly exposed film, vintage film that's faded, you know, those kind of filters. They're really good, they're really neat. So you've got 4 different sections you can play with or you can turn off. And I love working with the texture filters. They're great. So you can see here that I've allowed one of the texture filters. I can't remember if it was under scratches or dust. No, it's probably under erosion or something. So next we're going to have to we're kind of happy with our image now. So we're like thinking, okay, this is getting close to where I'm going to want to print it probably. So I'm going to have to start inspecting this. I want to see like, okay, how bad is the warning about gamut? Like, is this going to print in a CMYK printer as well as it looks on the screen? The answer is usually no, but to what degree is what we have to kind of judge. So, okay, so if you go up in Photoshop and you view gamut warning, it will gray out anything that is too off the gamut for a CMYK printer. It's not 100% accurate. It's never as bad as what you see on here, but if it was entirely grayed out, I would have to decide, okay, maybe this isn't the right image. I can't have this kind of saturation. I can't have these colors. I like them, but I can't. I'm going to have to sacrifice. I'm going to have to pick something that's much more easier to print and get a successful print from, because you don't want to have prints coming out way different than what you're presenting. It's just not good. So I've got now here the 2 images side by side. So the RGB, I grabbed a screenshot of the RGB image and a screenshot of the CMYK. And as you can see, there's a slight difference. You've got little purplier blues in the water. You've got cooler greens. Usually what I find with teals, turquoises, greens, they do lean towards the bluer, cooler bluer side. So you can kind of definitely see that here. This is not such a drastic change. Like, I wouldn't look at that and go, oh my God, I can't. There's no way I can have this printed. It's too off gamut. It's not that bad. I would know how to adjust any mock-ups that were created when I go to upload this in Printify. I never leave my mock-ups the way they are because I know it's not even with the CMYK view. It's not a dead-on example of what the real printed item is going to look like. I tend to know what colors get altered in the CMYK print process by ordering lots of samples, unfortunately, as it is. But it really is necessary if you want to learn. And that's it. So hope you enjoyed it and learned something from it. And please feel free to comment questions. I'll try to check back and answer them as I can. Thank you, and bye-bye.